Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Today is a huge, monumental, historic day in American history. A New York appeals court threw out the $500 million absurd judgment against Trump in New York. I have been telling you consistently on this channel it would take place. I told you last year that the Colorado State Supreme Court would be overturned. If you watch this channel, did I not tell you, did I not do a million videos on how the Colorado State Supreme Court attempt to prevent Trump, to remove Trump from the ballot in Colorado and essentially nationwide would fail? The Supreme Court unanimously, even the liberal justices, sided with Trump, and they overturned the completely outlandish Colorado State Supreme Court ruling against Trump. The Supreme Court unanimously overturned the Colorado State Supreme Court ruling. I have been telling you consistently that an appeals court in New York would overturn the $500 million decision against Trump in New York. I also told you Trump would get immunity from Jack Smith because he didn't try to foment a rebellion, and he had the right to oppose any victory by Biden through legal means. He didn't try to steal anything. He just didn't believe that he lost to somebody like the previous president. That being said, they kicked Biden out of the presidential contest, and his vice president usurped him because of an op-ed from George Clooney. Even Democrats couldn't stand Biden for more than 4 years. So each step of the way, legally, Trump has won. He's been victorious. Have I not told you, if you watch this channel, Colorado State Supreme Court, I said that they would overturn I said that the Supreme Court would overturn the Colorado State, the Supreme Court would overturn the Colorado State Supreme Court. I said the Supreme Court would give Trump presidential immunity for official acts. He got presidential immunity, like I said he would. I said that the absurd $500 million ruling would be null and void. I'm telling you right now, when it gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to overturn the hush money conviction. It was not a campaign finance violation. It was the FEC did not drop the case, and the DOJ dropped the case. Hit subscribe to this channel. I will have a live stream on the $500 million victory tomorrow. I was going to have it this evening, but tomorrow I will have a live stream. Check this out. And you have Andrew Bailey, in addition to a former FEC chairman. This is exactly why the Supreme Court, especially after today in New York, will overturn the hush money conviction against Trump. That was even more egregious than the $500 million decision.
Federal Election Commissioner Trey Traynor and Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey set to testify today at today's hearing, and they join me now. Trey, you notice I emphasized the election in your title. I guess we're finally set to hear from somebody who actually understands how election law works. Juan Merchan cannot silence you. What are the top points, Trey, you're going to try and drive home today?
Well, the most important point is that Judge Merchan completely obliterated what's been longstanding federal election law with the jury charge that he gave, asking the jury whether Donald Trump had willfully contributed to a campaign. And the legal standard has long been knowing and willful standard, so he's completely upended that standard. And it's one of those things where the Department of Justice should have intervened early in this case and protected the jurisdiction of the federal government to enforce federal campaign finance law. They didn't. They didn't protect the jurisdiction of the Federal Election Commission, and it's completely perplexing why they didn't do that. There's long-standing Supreme Court precedent that says that they should have. And it's just how law works. People always fight over jurisdiction. They never give that up. And in this case, it was ceded so easily. Andrew, Democrats, of course, are going to try and flip the script, calling today's hearing playing politics. And they're going to make this point, Andrew, A.G. Bailey. They merely follow the facts.
So, by the way, this is the number 2 now at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Andrew Bailey, former Missouri Attorney General. Okay, he's there because people will get indicted. So everything that I have been taking place, if you watch this channel, I've been telling you, Trump is going to win legal victory after legal victory. The hush money conviction will be overturned. When it gets to the Supreme Court, because it looks like it's going to get to the Supreme Court, or it'll be overturned in New York, but it will be overturned. every single legal, every single example of a lawfare against Trump will be null and void, overturned, will fail miserably, because these are absurd leaps of logic. Okay, Trump did not commit a campaign finance violation. The FEC dropped the case. The DOJ dropped the case. A state cannot level a federal crime against anyone without the federal government involved. Check this out.
And the law up there in New York City. How will you cut the legs out from under that argument?
Well, they bent the law to meet the facts in a specious legal charge. There's an unseemly amount of prosecutorial misconduct. And at the end of the day, what that does is it injects both statutory and constitutional violations into the process, from the charging document onto the jury deliberations. And so this is a legally errant conviction. It's not a legally valid conviction. And that emphasizes the illicit nature of the witch hunt prosecution. And it's important that the American people understand that the goal here was never to convict President Trump of a crime. It was always to remove him from the campaign trail. Now, this is a presidential candidate that has a right to speak, and that we as a people have a right to access. This has done immeasurable damage to our democratic republic, and we've got to hold wrongdoers accountable. Let's
focus on this Matthew Colangelo, Alvin Bragg dichotomy here at A.G. Bailey, because the number 3 starter right now in the Yankees rotation is not waving his hand and saying, please send me to single A so I can ply my craft. What possible reason could Matthew Colangelo, the number 3 at the Department of Justice, have to leave the DOJ, go down to the Manhattan DA, if not for his desire to help the Democrats and get Trump?
Yeah, the DOJ may not have intervened to reassert the jurisdiction of the FEC. That's the appropriate legal avenue for the DOJ. But instead, what they did was deploy resources to the state of New York in the form of Matthew Colangelo, like you said, the former third-ranking official in Biden's Department of Justice, who led the trial court prosecution against President Trump on behalf of Alvin Bragg. So he takes a pay cut to go work in state court. He's politically motivated. Those prosecutors should have been disqualified from prosecuting that case. There was no case to begin with. A subsequent prosecutor that the court could have appointed would have identified that and dismissed it before it got this far. And again, Biden is behind this whole thing. I mean, he has managed the Department of Justice that also administers grants on behalf of the Soros-backed Vera Institute to Alvin Bragg's office with the intent of dismantling the criminal justice system. So while Alvin Bragg is ignoring crime in the subways and on the city streets, he is being trained to weaponize the criminal justice system against Biden's political opponents.
Trey, quick final word to you. If we don't stop this lawfare right now in its tracks, can our century-old justice system survive?
No, it can't. And we have a big threat to the First Amendment and whether or not candidates can actually run for office in any state, because we'll have turned loose all the prosecutors across the country, whether they be state or local prosecutors, to go after individual candidates for perceived violations of campaign finance law.
Thank you for what you're...
Perceived violations of campaign finance law. Why would that be a perceived violation? Why did the former Federal Election Commission chairman just state now the hush money verdict against Trump, which was a criminal verdict against Trump? Why would that be a perceived verdict? Because the FEC is a federal government agency. The Department of Justice is part of the federal government. The federal government literally dropped the hush money case. There was no evidence that he committed any crime. Everyone from Michael Cohen to the prosecutors to the entire planet to the Supreme Court knows this. The federal government cannot level, a state government cannot level a federal statute against anyone without the federal government involved. Okay, you can be charged under state and federal laws, but guess what? The federal government the Department of Justice has to be involved. The Department of Justice did not go after Trump because the Federal Election Commission dropped the case. This is completely unconstitutional. So the $500 million judgment was tossed out, like I said it would. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if and when it gets to the Supreme Court, just like the Colorado ballot decision, just like immunity, just like this $500 million civil case, just like all the immigration cases, Trump will win that legal battle. Hit subscribe to this channel. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe.